I never thought I'd be back in my mother-in-law's house. Yet here I stood, watching my 8-year-old son clutch his dinosaur backpack like a shield. After James and I divorced, I swore I'd never set foot in this place again. But life has a way of forcing your hand when you're a single mother with a flooded apartment and limited options. "Mom, please," Tommy whispered, his small hand gripping mine. "We can stay at Uncle Pete's, or even in a hotel." I knelt down to his level, straightening his perpetually crooked glasses. "Honey, we've talked about this. The insurance company won't cover a hotel, and Uncle Pete's house is being renovated. It's just for 2 weeks until they fix the burst pipe." "But the guest room," his voice trembled. "Remember last time?" I did remember, or at least I remembered his inexplicable meltdown 3 years ago when we'd stayed here after James first moved out. Tommy had been 5 then, and I chalked it up to the stress of the separation. He'd screamed about whispers in the walls and refused to sleep alone. I ended up taking him home after just 2 nights. "You're bigger now," I said, trying to sound cheerful, "and you've got Rex to protect you." I tapped his stuffed T-Rex, earning a weak smile. The front door opened before we could ring the bell. Martha Collins stood there in her signature pearl necklace and perfectly pressed slacks, her silver hair styled just so. 5 years of marriage to her son, and I'd never once seen her look anything less than magazine-ready. "Sarah," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "And Tommy. How you've grown." Tommy pressed himself against my leg, unusually shy. He'd always been outgoing, even with strangers, but something about his grandmother made him withdraw. "Thank you for letting us stay, Martha." I forced warmth into my voice. "The flooding was quite unexpected." Of course. She stepped aside. "Family is family, even after, well," she let the sentence hang, and I felt the familiar sting of her judgment. In her eyes, I failed by not trying harder to save my marriage to James, never mind his drinking or the other women. We followed her inside, and I couldn't help but notice how nothing had changed. The same antique furniture, the same formal arrangements of dried flowers, the same faint smell of lavender and furniture polish. The house was a museum to Martha's perfect life. Every surface gleaming, every item in its designated spot. "I've prepared the guest room upstairs," Martha said, leading the way. "The one Tommy stayed in last time. I kept it just as it was." Tommy's grip on my hand tightened painfully. "Mom," he whispered urgently, "please, can't we share your room?" "Tommy," I started, but Martha cut in. "Nonsense. A growing boy needs his own space, and Sarah will be right next door in the blue room." We reached the guest room, and Martha threw open the door with a flourish. The late afternoon sun streamed through lace curtains, illuminating the antique twin bed with its white iron headboard and the heavy oak dresser against the far wall. A rocking chair sat in a corner, draped with one of Martha's hand-crocheted afghans. "It's lovely," I said automatically, but Tommy had gone rigid beside me. "The closet," he whispered. "Mom, look at the closet." I followed his gaze to the closed closet door. It was just a normal door, painted white like the walls, with a brass knob that needed polishing. "Oh, that reminds me," Martha said brightly. "I stored some of James' old things in there, from when he was a boy. I thought Tommy might like to look through them." Tommy shook his head violently. "No, I don't want to." "Tommy," I scolded, embarrassed by his outburst. "That's very thoughtful, Martha. Thank you." Martha's lips thinned. "Well, I'll let you two get settled. Dinner's at 6 sharp." She glided out, closing the door behind her. The moment she was gone, Tommy erupted into tears. "Mom, please. I'll sleep on the floor in your room. I'll sleep in the bathtub. Just not here." "Tommy, stop this." I knelt down, wiping his cheeks. "What's got you so worked up about this room? Is it because it reminds you of when Daddy left?" He shook his head frantically. "It's the whispers. They come from the closet at night. And then the rocking chair moves by itself. I saw it last time. And there's scratching in the walls. And now." I cut him off firmly. "You're too old for these stories. I know things have been hard with the divorce and now the flood, but we need to make the best of it. Grandma Martha is being very kind letting us stay here." "She's not kind," Tommy muttered, so quietly I almost missed it. "She's just pretending." I sighed, standing up. "Let's unpack your clothes. Once you're settled, it won't seem so scary." I moved toward the closet, but Tommy grabbed my arm. "Don't." "Tommy, this has to stop." I pulled free and grasped the closet doorknob. It was ice cold to the touch, but I told myself it was just the old house's poor circulation. I pulled the door open. The closet was ordinary enough, a rail of hanging clothes, boxes stacked on the shelf above, and some old toys scattered on the floor. But as I reached for a box labeled James, age 8, something caught my eye. Wedged between the wall and the shelf support was what looked like a small notebook. I stretched up on tiptoe and managed to work it free. It was a child's journal, the cover decorated with dinosaur stickers. "That's mine," Tommy whispered. "From last time?" I hid it there. I opened it, recognizing my son's messy handwriting. The first entry was dated 3 years ago, during our previous stay. My heart stopped as I read the first line. "Dear Diary, I found Daddy's old journal today. The one from when he was my age. He saw the whispers too, and he wrote about what Grandma did to make them stop." A floorboard creaked behind us, and I spun around. Martha stood in the doorway, her perfect smile now oddly fixed. "I see you found the closet interesting after all," she said softly. "Why don't we come down to the kitchen? I made lemonade. We can talk about old times." I clutched Tommy's journal to my chest, my heart pounding. Martha's smile remained perfectly in place, but her eyes had turned cold and sharp as winter frost. Tommy pressed against my side, trembling. "Actually," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I should call the insurance company about our apartment. Tommy, why don't you?" "Nonsense," Martha cut in. "Those calls can wait. Family time is precious, Sarah. You, of all people, should understand that after taking my grandson away." "I didn't take him away," I protested. "James was the one woe. Let's not discuss unpleasant things in front of the child." Martha's voice was honey sweet, but her eyes never left the journal in my hands. "Tommy, dear, run down to the kitchen. I made those sugar cookies you used to love." Tommy didn't move. "Mom," he whispered, "don't let her take the journal." Martha's smile tightened. "What secrets are you keeping from Grandma, Tommy? You know I don't approve of secrets in my house." I slipped the journal into my back pocket, making sure Martha saw the movement. If she wanted it, she'd have to acknowledge it directly. "Tommy, go call Uncle Pete. Tell him we might visit after all." "The phones are down," Martha said smoothly. "Storm coming, you know. Why don't we all go to the kitchen? We can look through James' old photos while we have our cookies." As if on cue, thunder rumbled outside. The afternoon sun had vanished, dark clouds rolling in with unnatural speed. The room dimmed, shadows deepening in the corners. The rocking chair creaked, though there was no breeze. "Mom," Tommy's voice quavered. "The whispers are starting early today." I started to tell him not to be silly, but then I heard it, a soft, sibilant sound coming from the closet, like multiple voices speaking just below the threshold of understanding. Martha's smile widened. "Oh, we hear them too. James used to complain about them at your age. Such an imaginative boy. But I helped him grow out of it." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. I thought about James, my confident, successful husband who turned to drinking after his father died, who'd sometimes wake up screaming about his childhood, who'd beg me never to leave Tommy alone with his mother. "What did you do to him?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "What did you do to my husband when he was a child?" "I made him strong," Martha said simply, "like my mother made me strong. Sometimes children need special attention to overcome their fears." She took a step forward. "Tommy obviously needs the same help. He's too sensitive, like James was. But I know exactly what to do." The whispers grew louder. The rocking chair began to move on its own, a slow, deliberate creak back and forth. Tommy started to cry. "We're leaving," I announced, grabbing Tommy's hand. "Right now." "Oh, I don't think so." Martha's voice had changed, becoming deeper, almost guttural. "The storm's too bad now. You'll have to stay. And we have so much to discuss about Tommy's upbringing." I yanked Tommy's journal from my pocket and flipped it open randomly, desperate to understand what was happening. My eyes fell on an entry. "Daddy's journal says Grandma has a special room in the basement. That's where the whispers come from. He said she put him in there when he was bad, but the worst part wasn't the dark or the cold. It was the things that came to visit him." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating Martha's face. For a split second, her features seemed to shift, becoming something ancient and hungry. The whispers rose to a chorus, and dark shapes began to writhe in the corners of the room. "Tommy, I said calmly, though my heart was racing. Get your backpack. We're going to play a game. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. What kind of game? It's called Run Fast, Don't Look Back. I scooped him up, thank God he was still small for his age, and bolted for the door. Martha moved with impossible speed, but I shouldered past her. Her fingers scraped my arm, drawing blood. You can't leave, she shrieked, her voice no longer human. He needs to learn. They all need to learn. We thundered down the stairs, Tommy clinging to my neck. The house had transformed. Shadows danced on the walls, furniture seemed to move of its own accord, and the whispers followed us, growing louder and more insistent. The front door's locked, Tommy cried. It always is. Then we'll make a new door. I ran straight for the large bay window in the living room. Behind us, Martha's footsteps descended the stairs, slow and deliberate. Sarah, she called, her voice sweet again. Don't be foolish. Every family has its traditions. Every child must be taught. James understood in the end. Tommy will too. I grabbed a heavy brass candlestick from a side table. Close your eyes, baby, I told Tommy, and swung with all my might at the window. The glass shattered. Cold rain whipped in, along with a gust of wind that scattered Martha's perfect arrangements. I kicked away the remaining shards and climbed through, protecting Tommy as best I could. This isn't over. Martha's voice followed us into the storm. He's my grandson. You can't keep him from his heritage. We ran through the rain to my car, thunder cracking overhead. My hands shook so badly I could hardly get the key in the ignition. As we peeled out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of Martha in my rearview mirror. She stood in the broken window, her figure seeming to ripple and change, growing taller, darker. Mom? Tommy's voice was small. Is that why Daddy drinks? Because of what's in the basement? I gripped the steering wheel tighter, remembering all the times James had woken up screaming. All the times he begged me to keep Tommy away from his mother. The way he'd started drinking heavily after his father died, and Martha had insisted on helping with Tommy's upbringing. Yes, baby, I think it is. I reached over and squeezed his hand. But we're going to help Daddy now, because now we know the truth. Tommy clutched his backpack closer. I put Daddy's old journal in here, he whispered. When Grandma went to make lemonade, I thought we might need it. Smart boy, my brave, brilliant boy. We do need it, I said. And we're going to make sure those whispers never hurt anyone in our family again. As we drove through the storm, I could have sworn I still heard whispers on the wind. But this time, they sounded almost like a warning. We found James at his usual bar, hunched over a glass of whiskey. 3 years of hard drinking had aged him, turning his once handsome face haggard and lined. When he saw us, soaking wet, Tommy still trembling, he stood up so quickly his bar stool crashed to the floor. Sarah? Tommy? What happened? His eyes focused on the scratches on my arm, the small cuts from the window glass. Did my mother? I placed Tommy's backpack on the bar and pulled out the old journal we'd taken from Martha's house. The leather cover was cracked with age, the pages yellow and brittle. James's childhood handwriting filled the pages with shaky letters and terrible truths. All the color drained from his face. Where did you find this? Your son saved it, I said quietly, just like he saved your old toys, your comics, everything he could reach in that basement room before she caught him last time. He knew you needed proof that it was real. Tommy reached for his father's hand. I heard the whispers too, Daddy, just like you did. James collapsed back onto his bar stool, tears streaming down his face. I thought I was crazy. She always said I was crazy, that I imagined it all. Even Dad started believing her in the end. Is that why you never told me? I asked, sitting beside him. Why you just started drinking instead? He nodded, wiping his eyes. How could I explain? That my mother, that she, he couldn't finish. That she feeds them, Tommy said solemnly. The things in the basement. The ones that whisper, she feeds them fear, children's fear. James stared at our son in horror. How do you know that? It's in your journal, and I found the old books in the basement, the ones with weird writing. They say fear makes them stronger. That's why she locks kids down there. That's why she hurt you. I watched my ex-husband carefully. James, your father, did he die of natural causes? James's hands began to shake. He found her books. started asking questions. Then he had his heart attack while she was bringing him tea. He laughed bitterly. I knew, but who would believe me? She's Martha Collins, pillar of the community. Perfect mother. Perfect grandmother. Not anymore, I said firmly. We have proof now. Your journal, Tommy's journal, photos he took of the basement room and the books. And we're not the only ones who've seen her true face. Thunder cracked outside the bar. The lights flickered. She's coming, Tommy whispered. She always finds her family. James grabbed the journals. We need to go. Now, I know somewhere we can stay, somewhere she can't. The bar's door burst open. Martha stood there, rain streaming down her face, her perfect hair and clothes now in wild disarray. Other patrons turned to stare, but their eyes seemed to slide right past her, as if they couldn't quite focus on what they were seeing. Family meeting? Her voice echoed strangely. How lovely. James, darling, you're looking quite unwell. Perhaps some of Mother's special tea. James stood, pushing Tommy behind him. For the first time in years, I saw the man I married, strong, protective, sober in the face of real danger rather than drowning in memories he couldn't face alone. No more tea, he said. No more basements. No more traditions. It ends now, Mother. Martha's face twisted. You ungrateful child. Everything I did for you. For our bloodline. The power they offer us is poison, James finished, and you'll never get near my son again. I pulled the last item from Tommy's backpack, one of Martha's precious books, filled with symbols and dark promises. Her eyes widened in recognition. You see this? I held it up. Copies are already in a lawyer's office. If anything happens to any of us, anything at all, it all comes out. Your perfect reputation, your standing in the community, all of it burns. You wouldn't, she hissed. The shame to the family. Watch me. I struck a match from the bar, holding it near the book's corner. Leave us alone, Martha. Find someone else to feed your basement friends. Your grandson is off the menu. For a moment, something inhuman flickered behind her eyes. The shadows in the bar grew darker, and that familiar whisper started up. But then, very well. Her face smoothed back into its perfect mask. But remember, blood calls to blood. He'll seek us out eventually. They always do. She turned and walked out into the storm. We watched until her figure disappeared into the darkness. Tommy hugged his father tightly. Are we safe now? James picked him up, holding him close. We will be together. I gathered the journals and the book, these tangible pieces of a nightmare finally dragged into the light. We have a lot to talk about, I told James. About recovery, about co-parenting, about facing the past instead of drowning it. He nodded. I know, I'm ready. No more running, no more hiding in a bottle. My son needs his father, not another victim. As we walked out to my car, the storm was already passing. The whispers had faded to silence. Tommy had fallen asleep in his father's arms, his face peaceful for the first time in days. Looking at them, I realized some good had come from our encounter with Martha. We'd found the truth. We'd found our strength. And most importantly, we'd found our way back to being a family, not the perfect, polished kind Martha demanded, but the real, messy, loving kind that would do anything to protect each other, even from the monsters that whisper in the dark.